Hi everybody, my name is Dirk Coetzee. I've been the winemaker for Lavinia for the past 16 years. Feel quite fortunate and blessed to be in this beautiful area called Stellenbosch and to really farm on a small boutique farm. This has always been the side of the industry that I love the most, you know, where it comes down to craftsmanship, to something that you can really feel. There's a lot of soul to the wines that we create as well. I grew up in a small little town just past Hookville on a farm. My father was actually a teacher in George, and yeah, we always had to do with wine. He was also a connoisseur, so we loved to drink wine together and exchange on the quality of it and on other aspects as well. So yeah, it's been part of my, I would say, my upbringing. And also himself, he was quite an intellectual person. He read a lot of articles, etc. And he was just an amazing speaker. And I think this is also something that I like to convey. I love to speak to people about the product and the bottle of wine that they've got in their hand. And especially if it comes to Lavinia, you can imagine it forms a big part of my heart to a certain extent. But yeah, so farming has always been part of my life where I grew up, and I knew that I wanted to make farming part of my future. Seeing that Lavinia means the future, it's quite applicable. But yeah, I really wanted to be part of nature, and that urge to have that part of my life really directed myself into becoming a winemaker and a viticulturist. I love viticulture. Viticulture is, for me, that's where the grape is grown, but it's also I would say the ingredient that we work with, and the better the ingredient, the easier or the more comfortable you get with it, the easier it will be to really craft something good. That being said, also I've always been in love with creation and creating something in this sense. Pinotage, it's lovely to be able to take the soils and take the terroir and create something where you can put it on the table and see people enjoy it. So that's also the love, I would say, where the love comes from for crafting. And I love natural elements like leather and wood, and so things that I grew up with. I think that really promoted the fact that I'm in the BSc or the agricultural sector where I find myself at the moment. Yeah, I was quite strong in school if it comes to numbers, and yes, I entered myself into becoming a number cruncher. Luckily, 2 days before class started, I decided, listen, I'm going to do what I love, and what I love is really being, like I said, close to nature and craftsmanship. And I decided, listen, let's just do a BSc for a start, and then from my second year onwards, we started to specialize in viticulture and enology. And I think also being part of a very social circumstances with a lot of friends and being in Stellenbosch and getting to know wine even better from where I grew up, everything just, it's like it just started to flow into that direction and directed straight up into viticulture and enology. Yeah, so I think the excitement of being part of a bigger group called Advini, it's a French-owned company. They've been doing business for 152 years, and we've got about 2,400 hectares of vine in France, and 1,900 of them are actually being farmed biodynamic, not even organic. So you can imagine having that influence, but also being part of a lot of exchange between myself and the viticulturist and the enologist on the other side. Really creates an excitement of trying to implement some of those techniques within our business here in South Africa. Yes, we know that our temperatures, our climate, everything is so different. We're also recognizing that, yes, we've got an earth that's warming up. So how do we cope with that, especially in a very arid winemaking, viticulturist area in South Africa? How do we cope with that? Also, we needed to think about it and really think out of the box. I think South Africans, we've been used to high temperatures and aridness for a long time. So I think we've got a lot of things in place in terms of clonal selections, in terms of cover crop that we sow every year. Cover crop for a certain reason, some of them being for the organic matter. If I'm thinking about Kurog has got a beautiful, big root system to really open up these hardy soils. We're farming on the most ancient soils in the world, and the reason why I say that is we've never been ice capped, we've never gone through ice age. Us as Africa, and we've always been part of a subtropical climate, which means that while the whole of Europe was under ice, we literally started to weather, and that time frame was 240 million years. So you can imagine our soils are quite hard, they're much shallower. So the way that we function with these hard ancient soils are much different from what we do in Europe, but still having that possibility of exchanging with our French counterparts, it's super, because you can go and have a look at what they do, and they can do the same. They can come here and they do the same. They come here and they exchange, and they take a lot of info that they see how we function with what we've got, and how do they imply that onto their new circumstances, seeing that especially in the northern hemisphere are also moving into a more of a dry and arid climatic phase, I would say. So yeah, so what a nice exchange, and yes, we've definitely applied a lot of organic I would say techniques. For me, most of the time, it's not necessarily always about putting that sticker on the bottle. It's about what your heart feels like when you go to bed at night. You know, for me, it's about the next generation. So the way that we farm today needs to be of such a kind that the next generation will be able to also farm on these soils, and they need to be alive and well nurtured and taken care of. So many times you hear of new generations farming on a farm, and then they just don't get the same amount of crop, etc., that their dad or their grandfather used to get. And then we want to ask the question, but we're never actually going to have a look at how was the soils treated, how was the whole, I would say, terroir being treated throughout the course of its lifespan. And that's important for me. Whatever we do today at Lavinia is in such a kind of way that it needs to bring back fertility, needs to really improve the microorganism space within the soil. In order for that, you're farming with something which is alive. But vines are alive, and for that reason, the whole biosphere needs to be alive where it's been grown in. That's important. So yeah, let's talk about block number 2. It's the specific block that's being used for the Grand Pinotage. So 14 years ago, I realized that this specific block gives me different fruit from all the others. Beautiful, small little berries, so there's a great skin to juice ratio. But in terms of the specific site, and that's very important for me, why is this site so important for Lavinia? And if you take your bakkie, you go up the hill, you already feel the elevation. A lot of times when people come to the farm, they tell me, and I tell them, listen here, guys, we're maritime influence. They said, Derek, it's impossible. We don't feel the ocean. It's quite quiet where we're standing now. And I normally tell them, okay, let's get in the vehicle, let's go up the hill. The moment we get to block number 2, which is the highest point on the farm, 220 meters above sea level, you actually see those the same person that told you, we're not maritime influence, they're getting cold. And I totally love that, because I normally ask them, okay, do you feel the wind now? Can you smell the bamboo? And I think that's the amazing thing about this specific site, where the grapes come from, is it's nice high elevation, 220 meters above sea level, and it's maritime influence. So a lot of influence coming from the cold Atlantic, but also from the bay. There's a beautiful study that's being done in terms of the day to night switch in Cape Town versus what you'll find in Montpellier, in terms of why do we have such a beautiful afternoon breeze. And we actually benefit from this specific breeze, especially when you're high up like at block number 2. it really exerts a lot of cold into the vineyards and keeping that freshness. And this is also what you pick up with the wine, a lot of freshness coming through. But the study actually went, so they had a look at the two sites, let's say for instance Montpellier, and on the other side you've got Stellenbosch. If we look at the sun or the rays direction or angle, if you have Montpellier on the left, it's about 46 degrees, Stellenbosch being 32. So the sun is much more direct if it comes to Africa or Stellenbosch versus Montpellier. And in the same time, the Mediterranean, it's much warmer than what we'll find with the cold Atlantic. So you can imagine having a very cold ocean compared to a land surface that really heats up quite fast because of the direct sun rays. You've got a big movement of warm air upwards, and then you've got this cold wind or cold temperature moving underneath that. And that big variation between landmass and ocean, it just exerts, it creates, I would say, the energy for that movement of air. And this is what we find 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you're in this specific block. You feel the ocean coming through. And it also forms part of the, I would say, the Cape Doctor, which we so love, you know, the southeaster. Southeaster can do a lot of harm, but it also heals, and it almost heals the land. It keeps it from having too much dampiness. It also really clears the air in such a way that it helps the air to move through the bunches, like I said, and to prevent it from a lot of rot and these kind of things. So being up high, and then the beauty of Lavinier, you know, you can forget about anything I've said, you know, and just remember this. There's a beautiful ridge of decomposed shale that runs from the Stellenbosch mountain, and it runs across the back of the farm, and it runs across block number 2. So this is where we slot into. And shale is beautiful because shale has been formed as a sedimentary rock, and it's been formed because of water that was actually in this area. So they actually predict that the Western Cape has been submerged 7 times in its lifespan, which means that that sedimentary rock was formed because of an inland lake or the ocean being part of this area. And this is where we farm on. And the shale really gives us a lot of fruit intensity. It's clayish, as you can imagine. When you walk into a farm dam, you really get this clayish feeling. It's the same that what you'll get when you hold this piece of rock in your hands. And it actually presents a lot of humidity to the plant at certain stages, which is super because it really backs pinotage for a long time throughout the season. Where with granite, you lose a lot of your moisture quite early, so you always have to irrigate a bit. But with the shale and with pinotage being a moderate grower, you have a lot of balance. You've got this vine which is not too long, it's just a good size. It actually stops when it needs to stop, so you can trellis it on a very small trellising system. And then you've got the shale that really backs it with enough moisture throughout the season. So with granite, you've got a lot of growth. With shale, it's slow, moderate, but in balance, which I quite like, especially on a very shallow soil that we've got in block number 2. When you farm with granite, you know, you're farming with a substrate which loses its moisture quite early. So the grapes or the vines are really active at the start of the season, but throughout the season, a lot of times it's been neglected in terms of having moisture. So for that reason, with granite, you do get a lot of, I would say, oomph, but a lot of body that we normally find with granitic soils, where it's the opposite with shale, being very supportive. It's almost like it gives that lushness, you know, and that perfuminess in terms of its aromatics. So we always, when we look at the Grand Pinotage, 3 of them are being farmed on shale, and some of them are being farmed on granite, and it's very distinctive, and it's really easy to see the difference between these wines being made from granitic soils versus shale soils. Shale is something that you only get in South Africa. You don't even get that in Africa. You don't even get it in some of the European countries. So it's a lovely soil to work with, like I said. If I think about Pinotage in a whole, Pinotage it's a lovely variety to grow for the fact that it's a moderate grower. If I think about block number 2, it really works well on that specific soil type. Seeing that it's a shallow soil and it's a moderate grower, you already have a soil that it's quite leach, so it's not that strong, and the fact that it's moderate means that you don't have to really put it into a massive canopy. It can really go with something quite small, about 1 meter high. And the beauty of South Africa and the industry is that our vines are so well manicured in the sense that we've got enough labor. And this is something that I've recognized so many times when I travel. When I come back home, I just feel that, these vines are so, there's a touch to it. If we think about the South African industry with the climatic factors that we face on a daily basis, it is actually that something that is quite, I would say, daunting for others, but we've managed really well in certain, for certain reasons, I would say. So if we think about South Africa, it's super arid, how do we function with that? We've implemented a lot of techniques, I would say, and I'm thinking about cover crops that we sow for various reasons, Korog and Vika, which is a lepune, in order to cover those, we call it ridges, especially during summer times. And I think our biggest asset is our labor force in South Africa. A lot of times when I travel abroad and I come back home and I see how manicured and well looked after our vineyards are, it really makes you feel, blessed to a certain extent, because you can see the touch of a hand to our vineyards. And I think that's the beauty of it. So throughout the course of the whole season, throughout the year, you've got people moving through the vineyards, and really, even if I think about taking care of weeds, most of the time we don't do any spraying. We literally wait for the rain, and then after the rain we'll go and we'll literally pluck out the weeds by hand. Again, it's all about that finesse and that touch. And in terms of the South African industry, even with big farms, some of the farms that I know being 1,600 hectares big, they also farm in such a way. So it's almost a little bit old school, but it's very true to the nature of the vine and true to the circumstances. I really sometimes, mechanizing everything is not always the answer for me. It's about how subtle can you be when you grow the grapes. How subtle can you be on the grape itself, on the plant, in order to create something which is magic. I think one specific factor about this specific block number 2, is the road direction. So the road direction at the moment, it's a north-west, southeast, and for that reason, the amount of time that the sun spends on the right-hand side of the trellising system versus the later, I would say, afternoon sunshine side, it's exactly the same time. For that reason, we don't have to take off too many leaves. We don't have to do too much foliage removal, which is awesome, because you actually leave the grape just to grow, or the plant just to grow on its own. At the end of the day, it's also, when you implement something on this specific block, for me, it's about minimalisticness. It's about trying to outcompete the weeds with what you sow in terms of cover crops. It's about taking a lepune and putting back the nitrogen on an organic way. We also do a lot of natural release of small little ladybugs, which is awesome because they take care of the mealybug. We also have these beautiful raptor nests where we try to promote raptor activity for the reason that they take care of the rodents. And the rodents normally, the mice, they normally eat the cover crop being sowed. So if you can take care of the rodents, we absolutely love it. And talking about snakes, we've got a lot of snakes at Lavinia. A lot of people, they find it super scary. For us, it's awesome because they're there and they also take care of the rodents to an extent. And then we've got these beautiful green corridors, and the green corridors we actually plant. We plant a lot of our natural fynbos, which is a specific biome that you find only in the Western Cape and a little bit in the Eastern Cape. But we take some of these plants that you normally find on our mountains and we plant these beautiful green corridors. That is just to promote diversity at the end of the day, to have more bird life, to have more reptile being part of nature, and really to form a buffer between various blocks in terms of the movement of any disease. And it just creates something which is more holistic at the end of the day. And this is something that we work towards, is having something, again, alive and holistically healthy. Some of you that don't know, Pinotage it's a crossing between Cinsault and Pinot Noir. And up until today, we actually don't know why Perrault crossed these two varieties. You know, he never wrote it down. But as a viticulturist and an enologist, we truly believe that he took Cinsault as the mother of the crossing, which I felt it needed to be the father. He took the Cinsault because of its hardiness, and Pinot Noir because of its fruit expression. Whether it's correct or not, we don't know. But if we think about the climatically wise, what the benefit is in having Pinotage versus something like a Cabernet in terms of growing this vine, it's quite obvious where Pinotage is a very moderate grower. It's quite easy to farm with it for the fact that it really stops at the right time of the season. So you don't have too much excess vigor, so you can actually get away with much less actions in terms of, you know, taking out foliage or doing too much tipping and topping, as we call it. Where with Cabernet, it's quite aggressive, and at some stages or some cases we do have some ferric soils which can be quite aggressive. So you can imagine having a variety where it's got a high fertility, high growth potential with a very strong ferric soil. These vines you have to cut back all the time. It's different with Pinotage. It's a moderate grower, so you don't have to cut it back. Maybe once a season you have to do a small little tip action, but at the end of the day, it really, at the stage where you want the plant to stop, it literally stops, and it can really focus on sending all of its energy to its bunches where it should go, rather than its foliage, which is awesome. I think the beauty of Pinotage is definitely the thick skin. And all the good stuff is within the skin. That's where all the good stuff is really concentrated. So having this beautiful thick skin, thick cuticula, where all your tannins and your color and all of those components are captured, it's always a benefit in terms of wine quality. So you take in this grape with this beautiful thick skin. The moment you start to work with it, it releases all of these components. And this is why we fell in love with Pinotage. You know, the first time when it was drunk, you know, the guys put it up into the air and they saw this beautiful purple color. You know, it's very similar to what you'll find with Petit Verdot or Shiraz. And it just gives it that beautiful royalty, I would say. And then just not that, when you taste the wine, it really has an amazing tannin structure. So the tannin structure is so inherent, you know, it's in its DNA. So with other varieties, most of the time, you have to fight to get to a place where you have the same tannin structure and, I would say, muscularness of it. So with Pinotage, It's within its DNA. It's a variety with beautiful tannin structure, especially if you're talking about something which it's a niche product, it's small scale, it's selection, all of these things. It's a wine that needs to be cellared up. It's a wine that you want to be able to age. Talking about aging ability, if you take Pinotage compared to some of the other royal varietals, I always say that's the only way that a variety can show royalty is if it can age. And I think the beauty today is 60, 62 years down the line of having Pinotage being on the commercial market, we get to drink the 30, 35-year-old Pinotages. And yeah, we're just seeing such beauty in terms of its aging ability. If I think about Pinotage and you want to compare it to anything that you find across the globe, because we always want to make this comparison, I would say in terms of its perfume, it reminds me of the great Saint Joseph. In terms of its crunchy, juicy chewiness, it reminds me of a great Malbec, Argentinian Malbec. And aging ability, it's like an elephant. It can age forever. It really reminds me of a top-end Nebbiolo. If I think about Lavinia being a small boutique cellar, it really comes down to having a feel for nature, having a feel for the site, and combining that with technology. Technology can be overwhelming most of the time, especially where we find ourselves nowadays, is we want to take this new technology and want to imply that onto our vineyards, but we have to be very careful in the way that we really make use of technology. At the end of the day is you need to, for me, in a case of viticulture, you need the technology to guide you. You need to be at the forefront of it. But at the end of the day, you also need to make use of your senses if it comes to making decisions. It's very important for me when you sit with your block being very close to being picked. A lot of people look at the pH and the TA. And yes, I know that's important, for color and for all various reasons. But at the end of the day, it's also about what the grape tastes like. There's so many things that we look at. We look at the seed, the color of it, the amount of acid around the pip, the way that the skin slips from the pulp. And for me, the final decision making at one stage, I normally, during the ripening phase, I would almost take my analytical side of it, put that and hide it in the lab, and I'll go out every morning, 5 o'clock, and I'll taste these grapes. In order to make the final decision, needs to be guided by your mouth, your taste, the feeling about it. It's very important for me. If you're a viticulturist/enologist, in my case, you have to be in touch with these two things. At the end of the day, it's not making wines which are analytically perfect, but really making wines which are in balance. Whether it's got a pH of this and a T of that, doesn't matter. If it's in balance and it's in harmony, it's much better. And I truly believe the moment that you let yourself being guided by analytics, you actually lose the soul of your piece of art. And that should never happen. But there's definitely a modern touch to it. Seeing that we farm on the shale, we do get a lot of that beautiful perfume. But also on the taste, I always say, you need to get that crunchy, juicy chewiness from Pinotage. And then Pinotage is really known for its sweet spice. So yes, you'll pick up a lot of sweet spice, but it will definitely be combined with that perfume that will run on the surface to a certain extent on the wine itself. The wine is quite full-bodied. Yes, there's a lot of tannin, but it's super refined. It's smooth, it's gentle, it's elegant, it's sophisticated. And this is exactly what we want with a high-end Pinotage, especially for the connoisseur out there, and for the person who really enjoys elegance. So let's give it a taste. Again, in terms of color, Pinotage is amazing. That's why we love the variety, because I can promise you 20 years down the line, this wine will seem like it's been bottled yesterday. That beautiful purple color will really stay for a long time. And then the perfume, because of the shale, it really stays quite fresh for a long time. So we've compared it a lot of times with other not just grapes, but varieties, but also with other pinotages. And we always find that because of the soil type, the perfume really stays quite prominent for a long time. So again, picking up that beautiful spice, as we call it, and also the perfume, the red flavors. Pinotage is known for the esters, and esters gives you a lot of that berry characters that comes through on the mouthfeel. And also the sweet spice gives it a lot of drinkability. That's why we love this grape variety so much, because all of a sudden when you've got the sweet spice, it really opens up to a lot of food, you know. And I don't necessarily always want to tell you, listen here, this kind of food you need to have with this, but because of the sweet spice, definitely it opens it up. In terms of, in South African context, we love to pair meat with pinotage, seeing that it's also a bit savory. But if I have to have something with this specific wine, it will be something like a Springbok Carpaccio or ostrich, which is quite lean, because the wine, for me, it's got a lot of finesse, elegance, and refinement. So